In unverified claims, Russia says it has repelled what it describes as a major offensive by Kyiv in the Donetsk region of Ukraine. Supporters of jailed Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny hold protests in Berlin and elsewhere around the world, marking his birthday and calling for his release.
Turkey sends a commando battalion to northern Kosovo to help quell ethnic unrest after disputed elections. Venetian culture is being lost under a sea of tourism, but some business owners are fighting back in their own small way.
Images of fighting in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. Russia says it's repelled what it described as a major offensive by Kyiv in the region and to have killed hundreds of Ukrainian troops. The claims could not be independently verified. The region is one of 4 annexed by Russia last year.
Целью противника являлось прорыв нашей обороны на наиболее уязвимом, по его мнению, участке фронта. Своих задач противник не добился, успеха не имел. Потери вооруженных сил Украины составили более 250 человек личного состава, 16 танков, 3 боевые машины пехоты, 21 боевая бронированная машина.
Ukraine has not commented on the fighting, and it's unclear if the attacks were the start of its planned spring counteroffensive. It's also not clear why the Russian Defense Ministry waited until Monday morning to announce the attack, which it said started on Sunday.
Rescuers were digging through rubble in the Dnipro area of Ukraine throughout Sunday after Russian strikes on Saturday. The regional governor said beside the death of a 2-year-old, 5 more children were among the 22 people injured when 2 residential buildings were hit.
Я бігла, стала чудничними, бігла з підстанції. Під мене, від машини кидалася додому, в мене дитина сама дома була. Дитину, решетки, тягнули, розкрутили, витягли дитину з вікна. В реанімацію.
Путін б'є по цивільним. Подивіться, де тут знаходяться військові частини, де тут об'єкти, які можна було б вважати законною ціллю. 2-поверховий будинок, де живуть діти і де живуть старші люди і жінки.
Across the border near the Russian town of Belgorod, residents seek shelter from the intense shelling from pro-Ukrainian forces. Donations of food and other basics are being handed out to those who have been forced to leave their homes.
Конечно, состояние ужасное, но держимся, пытаемся себя крепиться, потому что есть дети, это дает стимул дальше жить. А что будет, конечно, не знаем, но будем держаться.
The Belgorod region has been hit by drone and artillery attacks from Ukraine for months, but the shelling has never been as intense as in recent days.
The Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, a symbol of peace and unity. It was here on Sunday that hundreds of supporters of jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny came to mark his 3rd birthday in prison and call for his release, one of several rallies held around the world.
We do these rallies all over the world to draw as much attention as possible to his case, I mean in general, because it is very important for people to still continue to watch him, because this is what actually keeps him safe.
Ich wünsche, dass erste klar frei. Zweite, ich wünsche ihm viel Kraft.
In Russia, some risked jail themselves to call for Navalny's release. Police reportedly arrested at least 45 people taking part in pro-Navalny demonstrations in cities including Moscow and St. Petersburg. Navalny has served 2 years of a 9-year sentence for fraud and contempt of court. Charges, he says, were trumped up to punish him for his work to expose official corruption and for organizing anti-Kremlin protests. He's now facing a new trial on extremism charges that could keep him in prison for decades.
The Polish Parliament has passed the legislation dubbed the Russian Influence Law. It's aimed at establishing a commission to prevent people holding public office if it finds they've been unduly influenced by Moscow. After signing the bill a week ago, the president introduced amendments over fears it could be used to target opposition figures and after criticism from the EU and US. But now he says there's no reason it shouldn't go ahead.
Nie uważam, żeby te podnoszone przez niektóre osoby zarzuty konstytucyjne były tak istotne, by trzeba było blokować wejście w życie tej ustawy. Powinna jak najszybciej zacząć funkcjonować.
As well as suspicions of potential abuse on the part of opposition figures and the international community, the act has also been criticised by some in the legal profession.
Organ państwowy, zwłaszcza taki, który dysponuje kompetencjami władczymi wobec obywateli, nie może sam sobie określać swojego zakresu działania, co jest niedopuszczalne w świetle konstytucji. Ustawę o komisji weryfikacyjnej można też traktować jako próbę obejścia artykułu 111 Konstytucji o Sejmowej Komisji Śledczej. Można twierdzić, że po to właśnie tą ustawę uchwalono, żeby nie trzeba było stosować tych rygorów, które dotyczą Sejmowej Komisji Śledczej. Ta ustawa uderza w proces wyborczy, w kreowanie organów wybieralnych państwa, czyli w samą podstawę w ogóle ustroju państwa.
According to some, the Russian influence law could be aimed at Donald Tusk in the upcoming elections. He called for a protest against it. He's often referred to as the Kremlin man by government backers, but some protesters said trying to silence him could bring him more support.
Wymyślił ktoś na Nowogrodzkiej, aby być może zakazać Tuskowi kandydowania, co jak pokazuje sytuacja dzisiejszy dzień, zupełnie inną stronę się obróciło i tylko i wyłącznie pomoże.
Chciałabym żyć w wolnym kraju i to jest mój komentarz na temat tej ustawy.
But there are also voices of support for the bill, like one man demonstrating against the Tusk supporters. He says anyone who shows support for Russia should be exposed.
Chciałbym, żeby ona była jawna, transmitowana, żebyśmy mogli wszyscy wiedzieć. Wreszcie niech odkryją nam karty, kto jest kto.
According to the organizers, there were 500,000 people protesting at the march announced by Donald Tusk. Meanwhile, the fate of the law on the Verification Commission is being waived, and after the changes announced by the president, Poland still awaits the Law and Justice Party's next steps. Magdalena Hodownik for Euronews from Warsaw.
A Turkish commando battalion has arrived in northern Kosovo in response to a request from NATO for troops to help quell violent unrest. A military convoy loaded with equipment is also believed to be heading to the Balkans country by land. NATO announced on Tuesday that it would be sending 700 troops to bolster its peacekeeping force in the area. KFOR currently consists of almost 3,800 troops, including some 350 from Turkey. Violent clashes with ethnic Serbs last week left 30 international soldiers wounded, including fractures and burns from improvised explosive incendiary devices. The disturbances grew out of a confrontation last week when ethnic Albanian officials, elected in votes overwhelmingly boycotted by Serbs, tried to enter municipal buildings to take up office, but were blocked by protesting Serbs. On Sunday, Serbian women laid wreaths on barbed wire around some protected buildings, denouncing the Kosovo authorities. They're demanding that the Albanian mayors and police officers leave the official buildings and that 2 Serbs who were arrested during police operations be released.
Indigenous people and their leaders have marched through Brazil's largest city, Sao Paulo, to protest a bill that is set to limit their land rights. Last week, lawmakers approved legislation that bars claims on indigenous territories if they were not physically present on them on October 5th, 1988, the day Brazil adopted its current constitution. Bill 490 was passed in the lower house but still requires the approval of the Senate and Brazil's President Lula da Silva.
Veteran AC Milan forward Zlatan Ibrahimovic announced his immediate retirement from soccer at the end of an emotional night at San Siro Stadium on Sunday. Speaking following his team's 3-1 win over Hellas Verona in their season finale, the 41-year-old Swedish striker said he was saying goodbye to football, but not his fans. His contract with Milan expires at the end of June and will not be renewed following a season plagued by injuries. He made only 4 appearances for the team this season after undergoing a knee operation last year.
In Venice, during the high season, the number of tourists visiting the city each day equals or exceeds the number of its inhabitants, around 50,000. It is, of course, a benefit to the city's economy, but it also represents a threat to the way of life and identity of this unique city. Marcello Strozzi is 45 years old and has been living on Giudecca Island since his birth. The family business where his mother used to work as a hairdresser closed in 2019 after 50 years of activity. Despite numerous offers for his shop to set up bars, restaurants and souvenir shops, he waited for 4 years for the right offer.
Volevamo trovare qualcosa che andasse bene e che fosse qualcosa di nuovo, qualcosa di diverso, qualcosa che sia più utile alla città, alle persone che comunque anche ci vivono.
Isola della Giudecca, proprio di fronte al centro storico, una volta brulicante di veneziani che andavano a fare la spesa nelle salumerie, nei fruttivendoli, adesso una meta turistica con bar e ristoranti che affacciano sul canale. Però alcuni veneziani, nel loro piccolo, stanno cercando di invertire la tendenza e di preservare l'identità e la cultura della loro città.
Eventually, for Marcello, the right offer did come in. A bookshop selling art books, a place where people could meet, talk and browse.
Vedo proprio questo turismo di massa che non guarda, non ammira quello che potrebbe veramente rimanere nel cuore e invece si limita a immortalizzarlo in un telefonino.
Perhaps the old Venice is slowly disappearing, not only because of the excessive number of tourists visiting each day, but also because many of those visitors prefer looking at their mobile screens rather than interacting with the city and its inhabitants.